There comes a quiet moment in a woman's life that changes everything. It doesn't arrive with shouting or tears, it arrives with clarity. It is the moment she realizes that begging for love, for respect, for consistency costs her something far more valuable than the relationship she is trying to save. It costs her selfhood. Smart women learn this not from books but from experience, from the exhaustion of explaining their worth to someone determined not to see it, from nights spent rehearsing conversations that never lead to understanding, from the slow erosion that happens when dignity is traded for hope. The one thing smart women never beg for is not affection, not attention, not even commitment. They never beg to be chosen, because the moment you beg to be chosen, you abandon yourself, and everything that follows is shaped by that abandonment. Smart women understand, often through painful initiation, that begging distorts power because power is not something that exists outside the psyche. It is born in the inner posture a person takes toward themselves. The moment a woman begs, something subtle but profound shifts within her. She may not notice it immediately, but the balance between her inner authority and the outer world begins to tilt. Begging is not merely an action. It is a psychological declaration that says, I believe you hold something essential that I do not possess within myself. And once this belief takes root, it reshapes every interaction that follows. Power in human relationships is rarely about dominance in the obvious sense. It is about perceived necessity. When one person appears more willing to lose the relationship than the other, the emotional gravity shifts. The one who fears loss more becomes smaller in their own eyes. This shrinking is internal before it ever becomes visible. Smart women sense this instinctively. They feel it in the tightening of the chest when they wait for a response, in the rehearsed explanations that form in their minds, in the way their own needs begin to feel excessive or inconvenient. These sensations are not signs of love deepening. They are signals that the psyche is under strain. In everyday life, this distortion often disguises itself as persistence or loyalty. A woman tells herself she is simply fighting for what matters. Yet beneath that story lies a quieter truth. The fear of abandonment has taken the wheel. When fear governs behavior, power dissolves. The other person may not consciously seek control, but the imbalance invites it. Human beings, whether they admit it or not, respond to asymmetry. When someone consistently lowers themselves to maintain connection, the unconscious mind of the other registers superiority. Respect weakens, not because the woman lacks value, but because she no longer acts as if she recognizes it herself. There is a psychological law at work here. What we chase excessively begins to define us, and what defines us begins to confine us. Begging narrows identity. A woman who once had many inner rooms, curiosity, ambition, playfulness, depth, slowly compresses herself into a single role, the one who wants, the one who waits, the one who hopes. This contraction is exhausting, and yet many endure it because the alternative feels like emptiness. But that emptiness is misunderstood. It is not a void, it is the space where self-respect waits to return. Smart women eventually notice that begging does not create closeness, it creates dependency. And dependency, unlike intimacy, does not invite reciprocity. It invites tolerance at best and indifference at worst. Studies on relationship dynamics repeatedly show that mutual investment is what sustains desire and respect over time. When effort flows in only one direction, attraction erodes, not grows. The psyche rebels against imbalance. Even the person being begged of often feels discomfort, though they may not articulate it. They sense the unspoken demand, the pressure to fill another's inner lack, and instinctively pull away. Real-life stories reveal this pattern with painful clarity. A woman pleads for consistency, for communication, for reassurance. The more she asks, the less she receives. When she finally stops, not as a tactic but as an act of self-preservation, something breaks open. Either the other person disappears, revealing the relationship's true fragility, or they return with sudden interest, effort, and urgency. Both outcomes confirm the same truth. Power was never restored by begging. It was restored by withdrawal of self-abandonment. What makes a woman smart is not the absence of longing, but the presence of awareness. She understands that power cannot be negotiated from a position of inner collapse. To beg is to externalize authority, to hand over the right to define worth, timing, and value. And once given away, that authority rarely returns. Through persuasion, It returns only through reclamation. This reclamation is quiet. It does not require confrontation or dramatic declarations. It begins internally, when a woman chooses to endure the discomfort of not reaching out, not explaining, not fixing what she did not break. This restraint is not coldness, it is containment. It is the psyche reassembling itself after fragmentation. In this space, she remembers who she was before the imbalance began. She reconnects with her center. Power, in its healthiest form, is not about control over another. It is about sovereignty over oneself. Smart women grasp this distinction deeply. They know that any relationship demanding the sacrifice of dignity will eventually demand more. They also know that walking away from begging is not a loss of love, but a return to self-alignment. And alignment, once restored, reshapes every future connection. When a woman no longer begs, she does not become indifferent. She becomes grounded. Her presence carries weight because it is no longer pleading to be acknowledged. It stands rooted, whole. And from that place, power is no longer distorted. It is integrated, balanced, and quietly unshakable. They know that begging creates a false version of love, because love, at its core, cannot survive where authenticity is replaced by fear. When a woman begs, she's no longer meeting another as an equal soul. She's negotiating from a place of inner rupture. What appears on the surface as devotion is often a deeper anxiety speaking. The fear that without constant effort, explanation, or sacrifice, connection will vanish. This fear quietly reshapes love into something conditional, something that must be earned again and again through self-diminishment. False love is not loud. It feels intense, urgent, and consuming, which is why it is so often mistaken for depth. A woman may feel that her willingness to plead, to endure uncertainty, to tolerate emotional absence proves how much she cares. Yet what she is proving, unknowingly, is how much she is willing to abandon herself to preserve the bond. Real love does not ask for this trade. It does not require a person to shrink their needs so that another can remain comfortable in their avoidance in everyday relationships. This false version of love shows itself in subtle rituals. The woman waits longer than she should for replies. She explains her feelings with increasing precision, hoping that the right words will finally make her visible. She lowers her expectations and calls it understanding. Each adjustment feels small, almost reasonable. But together they construct a relationship built not on mutual desire but on accommodation. Over time, love becomes something she performs rather than something she receives. Psychologically, begging introduces a distortion. It places the other person in the role of the one who decides whether love is granted or withheld. This dynamic may temporarily keep the relationship alive, but it drains it of vitality. What remains is a fragile arrangement sustained by fear of loss rather than joy of connection. Studies on emotional attachment show that bonds rooted in anxiety produce cycles of pursuit and withdrawal, not stability. The more one clings, the more the other distances themselves, often without conscious intention. Smart women recognize this pattern not because they are immune to longing, but because they pay attention to its cost. They notice how false love leaves them feeling restless rather than safe, confused rather than grounded. They sense the emotional hangover that follows moments of reassurance that never last. This is the psyche signaling that something essential is missing. Love that must be begged for cannot offer rest, because it is always one breath away from disappearance. Real-life stories echo this truth. Many women recall relationships where they begged someone to stay, to commit, to choose them. The person may have stayed physically, but emotionally they remained distant. The woman felt both relieved and empty, as if she had won something that did not nourish her. What she mourned later was not the end of the relationship, but the version of herself that accepted half presence as intimacy. False love also alters self-perception. When a woman repeatedly begs, she begins to internalize the belief that love is scarce and conditional. She may tell herself that enduring pain is the price of connection, that silence must be tolerated, that being too much is a flaw. These beliefs sink deep, shaping future relationships long after the original one ends. The danger of false love is not only that it fails, it teaches the psyche to expect failure. Smart women learn that love cannot be extracted through persistence. Desire cannot be argued into existence. Care cannot be negotiated from someone who withholds it. When love is real, it moves toward, not away. It responds without coercion. It does not need to be convinced of its own presence. This understanding often arrives after disappointment, after the exhaustion of trying to make oneself indispensable to someone determined to remain unreachable. The turning point comes when a woman stops asking for proof and starts listening to absence. She realizes that what is missing is not effort on her part, but willingness on the others. This realization is painful because it shatters the illusion that love can be saved through sacrifice. Yet it is also liberating. It returns her to a truth that false love obscured, that love which requires self-betrayal is not love, but survival. When she withdraws from begging, something inside her reorganizes. The urgency softens. The need to perform fades. She may still feel longing, but it no longer commands her actions. In this space, she encounters a deeper form of love, the one rooted in self-respect. From here, she understands that real love does not need to be begged for, because it arrives freely, meets her where she stands, and recognizes her without being persuaded. Smart women respect their inner signals because they have learned that the psyche speaks long before the mind can explain, long before words form, before logic organizes the experience. Something within begins to stir, a subtle tightening in the chest, a heaviness in the stomach, a quiet sense of unease that cannot be justified on paper. These signals are often dismissed as overthinking or sensitivity, but in truth they are the earliest language of self-preservation. To ignore them is to silence a part of oneself that exists precisely to protect wholeness. In many relationships, the first warning does not arrive as a dramatic event. It arrives as inconsistency, promises that feel vague, affection that appears and disappears, conversations that never quite land. A woman may tell herself she is imagining things, that patience will bring clarity, yet her inner world is already responding. Sleep becomes lighter, thoughts return to the same questions, her body remains alert as if waiting for something to go wrong. This is not weakness, it is perception. Psychological research has shown that the nervous system processes emotional information faster than conscious thought. The body recognizes patterns before the mind names them. Smart women learn to trust this early recognition. They understand that intuition is not mystical, it is accumulated experience speaking in a condensed form. Every time a boundary has been crossed in the past, every time words and actions failed to align, the psyche recorded it. Inner signals are the mind's way of saying, I have seen this before. Disrespecting these signals often leads to self-betrayal. A woman may override her discomfort to avoid conflict or abandonment. She may rationalize behavior that leaves her unsettled, convincing herself that love requires endurance. Over time, this creates an inner split. One party of her knows the truth, while another works tirelessly to deny it. This split is exhausting. It drains energy, clouds judgment, and erodes self-trust. Many women later say that the pain of the relationship was less damaging than the pain of ignoring themselves. Real life offers countless examples. A woman feels uneasy about someone's emotional unavailability, yet continues because the moments of connection feel powerful. Another senses that her needs are being minimized, but stays silent to keep the peace. In both cases, the inner signal was clear, but the fear of loss felt louder. Smart women eventually realize that what they fear losing is often already absent. The inner alarm was not warning of a future pain, it was naming a present one. Respecting inner signals does not mean reacting impulsively, it means pausing. It means listening without immediately explaining the feeling away. When a woman allows herself this pause, something important happens. The fog begins to lift, patterns become visible. She sees not just isolated moments, but a consistent emotional climate. This clarity is empowering because it replaces confusion with understanding. Confusion keeps a person stuck. Understanding creates choice. Neuroscience tells us that prolonged emotional uncertainty activates the same stress pathways as physical danger. The body remains in a state of vigilance, unable to relax. Smart women recognize that peace is not a luxury, it is a biological need. When a connection repeatedly disrupts that peace, the inner signals grow stronger, not weaker. Ignoring them requires increasing effort, which is why such relationships feel draining even when nothing overtly wrong appears to be happening. There is also a deeper layer to inner signals. They reflect alignment with values. When a woman feels diminished, rushed, or unseen, It is often because the situation violates something fundamental within her. Perhaps she values consistency, honesty, or emotional presence. The discomfort arises not because she is asking for too much, but because she is asking for what is right for her. Smart women learn that honoring these values is an act of self-respect, not selfishness. As women begin to respect their inner signals, they stop needing external validation to confirm what they already know. They no longer wait for undeniable proof before taking themselves seriously. This shift is subtle but profound. Instead of asking, "Is this bad enough to leave?" they ask, "Is this good enough to stay?" That question alone transforms their relationship with choice. Respecting inner signals also changes how a woman moves through endings. She does not need dramatic reasons or catastrophic events. She trusts the quiet knowing that something is not aligned. This trust brings a calm strength. Even when sadness is present, there is no inner war. She is not arguing with herself, she is listening. Over time, this practice rebuilds self-trust. Each time a woman honors her inner signal, she reinforces the belief that she is safe with herself. This belief becomes the foundation for future relationships. She no longer tolerates emotional confusion as the price of intimacy. She chooses clarity, not because it is easy, but because it allows her to remain whole. Smart women respect their inner signals because they understand that the deepest betrayal is not being misunderstood by another, but abandoning the voice within that never stops trying to tell the truth. They understand that self-respect is felt, not announced, because the deepest truths about a person are communicated without words. Long before boundaries are spoken or standards are explained, there is an inner posture that quietly shapes how others respond. Self-respect lives in this posture. It is not a performance and it does not seek witnesses. It is an internal alignment between what a woman knows she deserves and what she is willing to tolerate. When that alignment is present, it radiates outward in subtle but unmistakable ways. Many women attempt to announce their self-respect through declarations. They explain their worth, outline their expectations, justify their boundaries. While these efforts come from a sincere desire to be understood, they often reveal the opposite of what is intended. When a woman must repeatedly state her value, it suggests that she is trying to convince both herself and others of something that is not yet fully settled within her. Words alone cannot create respect where actions contradict them. In everyday relationships, this difference becomes clear. One woman repeatedly reminds someone how she should be treated, yet continues to accept neglect, inconsistency, or emotional absence. Another says very little, but when her limits are crossed, she adjusts her presence. She stops engaging where she feels diminished. She does not threaten or dramatize her withdrawal. She simply removes herself from what does not honor her. Over time, others respond to these two women very differently, not because one speaks better, but because one embodies her standard. P.S. Ecologically, people respond more strongly to what is consistent than to what is persuasive. A boundary that is explained but not upheld teaches others that it is flexible. A boundary that is lived teaches others that it is real. Smart women grasp this not as a strategy, but as an inner truth. They know that self-respect is not proven in moments of confrontation, but in moments of choice, especially the quiet ones. Real-life stories often reveal this shift after exhaustion sets in. A woman spends years trying to be understood, repeating the same conversations, hoping that clarity will bring change. Eventually, she stops talking, not out of bitterness, but out of realization. She sees that respect was never blocked by misunderstanding, it was blocked by tolerance. The moment she changes what she accepts, the dynamic changes or ends. Either outcome restores her sense of self. Self-respect being felt also explains why silence can be more powerful than explanation. When a woman no longer argues for her worth, her energy shifts. She is no longer negotiating her place. This creates a psychological presence that others sense immediately. It is not intimidating, but it is grounding. People instinctively understand that this is someone who will not abandon herself to be liked. There is also an inner transformation that occurs when self-respect is embodied. A woman stops seeking permission for her feelings. She no longer apologizes for needs that are natural to her. She does not rush to smooth over discomfort at her own expense. This does not make her rigid or cold, it makes her honest. Emotional honesty, when paired with self-respect, creates relationships that are cleaner and less draining. Neuroscience offers insight here as well. When actions align with internal values, the nervous system settles. There's less internal conflict, less anxiety. A woman who lives her self-respect experiences a quiet calm, even in difficult moments. She may still feel sadness, longing, or disappointment, but she does not feel fractured. This inner coherence is what others perceive as confidence, though it has little to do with bravado. Smart women also understand that announcing self-respect can become another form of seeking validation. Declaring boundaries while secretly hoping they will be tested reveals uncertainty. Embodying boundaries removes that hope entirely. There is no need to prove strength when it is already integrated. Strength becomes evident through consistency, not intensity. Over time, living self-respect reshapes identity. A woman begins to trust herself more deeply. She knows that if a situation becomes misaligned, she will respond in a way that preserves her dignity. This trust reduces fear. She no longer clings to relationships out of scarcity because she knows she will not lose herself in the process. This sense of internal safety is what allows her to love freely without self-betrayal. They understand that self-respect is felt, not announced, because respect is not something others grant after being convinced. It is something they sense when a woman's actions consistently reflect her inner truth. And once that truth is lived, rather than spoken, it becomes unmistakable, enduring, and quietly transformative. Smart women choose long-term dignity over short-term relief because they understand the hidden cost of choices made in moments of cost. She remembers the moments she went against herself, and those memories weigh heavier than the loss she once feared. Psychological research on delayed gratification shows that individuals who can tolerate short-term discomfort for long-term benefit experience greater life satisfaction. This principle applies not only to careers or health, but to emotional choices. Smart women apply this wisdom inwardly. They understand that the pain of walking away, setting a boundary, or saying no is sharp but brief. The pain of self-betrayal, however, lingers. It resurfaces as resentment, numbness, or a quiet sense of having missed oneself. Choosing dignity does not mean a woman feels no fear. It means she refuses to let fear decide for her. Fear urges immediate action. It says, do something so this feeling stops. Dignity invites stillness. It allows the feeling to exist without rushing to erase it. In that stillness, clarity emerges. A woman sees that her worth is not increased by endurance of pain, nor proven by how much she can tolerate. There is also a deep emotional maturity in understanding that relief can be addictive. Each time a woman seeks comfort from the very source of her pain, the cycle tightens. Relief becomes temporary, requiring more frequent reassurance. Dignity breaks this cycle. It withdraws energy from what destabilizes and redirects it toward what restores. This redirection often feels empty at first. Without the familiar drama or hope, there is silence. But within that silence, something essential rebuilds. Over time, women who choose dignity notice a shift in how they relate to themselves. They begin to trust their decisions. They stop negotiating their boundaries in moments of loneliness. They understand that being alone is not the same as being diminished. In fact, solitude chosen in self-respect often feels lighter than companionship that demands self-erasure. Stories of women who chose dignity often share a common thread. At the moment of choice, they felt as though they were losing everything. Later, they realized they had been losing themselves all along. The decision to prioritize dignity did not immediately bring happiness, but it brought coherence. Their inner world no longer argued against their actions. This coherence is deeply stabilizing. Smart women also recognize that long-term dignity reshapes future relationships. When a woman knows she will not abandon herself for temporary comfort, she enters connections with a different energy. She does not cling. She does not settle quickly. She chooses from fullness rather than fear. This does not make her demanding. It makes her clear. Choosing long-term dignity over short-term relief is not an act of punishment or pride. It is an act of self-loyalty. It is the quiet decision to live in a way that one's future self will recognize with respect. And that respect, once earned internally, becomes a source of strength that no momentary comfort could ever replace. The one thing smart women never beg for is the right to be valued. They know that anything requiring them to collapse inward is not meant to stay. They understand that love is not proven by endurance of neglect, but by the presence of mutual effort. And when they stop begging, they don't lose love. They lose illusions. What remains is something far stronger: self-trust, clarity, and the quiet confidence that says, I would rather stand alone than kneel where I am not chosen. And that is where real power begins.